Alright guys, good morning or good evening, good afternoon, whenever you're watching this. I hope you're having a good day as always. And today we're on to episode 2 of Lockdown Living Now. We're going to be talking about something a little bit different today. It's going to be a bit more informative, probably not the same as the last video the way I was doing it before, but it'll be a good one either way. Starting off with sleep, I think personally, you're probably looking at 7 to 9 hours is probably the sort of time that I'm getting in for sleep. I think it's massively important. Actually, when I was going through school and whatnot as a teenager, I was super tired, always coming back from school, head on the pillow straight away, and I'd just be knackered. I'd be crashed out, and whether that be going from school to the gym and then crashing out, or whether it be school and then crashing out, or whatever way you want to take it. But I think for me it was always massive in terms of actually helping me grow and put on that extra size, because I've always wanted to, probably ever since the age of 16, 17, I've always wanted to be putting on a bit more size, a bit more muscle mass, just looking a bit bigger in general. And I think that was it was probably one of the biggest keys. And at the time I think I had it caught in my head that I was just being lazy, and it was really getting on my nerves. But then I realised later on, now when I look back at it, obviously a lot of your growth and a lot of your development as well actually comes from sleep itself. And I think that only put me in the right stead when it came to actually developing and putting on that extra size and whatnot. And now fortunately enough, I don't come straight back home and crash out straight away. But I think especially as a teenager, if you're ever struggling, or you're in that little period, I guess, where you're thinking, why am I always tired? Why am I always this? Why am I always that? Especially if you're training at that sort of age, 15, 16, 17 going onwards, I think it's more than natural. So I wouldn't stress about it too much. And then in terms of being a healthy adult and sleeping as well, I think realistically 7 to 9 hours is a pretty good rate. Obviously sleep for anything younger than that, they need to grow, they need to develop, so that always helps. But I think for healthy brain function, you're looking for about 7 to 9 hours, and to be honest, that's really what I've stuck with as well. Alright, so now before I leave you on that, and then you're thinking, right Max, so you told me that sleep's important, I get that, but I can't sleep, or I oversleep, or I this, or I that. I think in terms of the best way to get your sleep pattern there, I think supplements is a very latter subject. I personally believe that diet and nutrition is always going to foresee any other route in terms of taking supplements. Supplements are always going to help, but I think the real ground core roots really come down to sort of nutrition and diet and what you're actually putting into the body. And obviously the ways to get around that, I've found personally, I think eating a lot of complex carbs is always a massive staple for me. I think having that slow digesting food is always going to help sort of set yourself off to bed. Oats, for example, I know quite a few people actually who have those sort of like late night oats, or even in the morning as well. Just I think having those sort of carbs are really going to help and not spike that insulin, which is the last thing you want before you go into bed, because obviously it's a time where you're trying to chill out, trying to relax. So stay away from any sort of insulin spikers, whether that be sugar or especially caffeine as well. Make sure that you're staying away from caffeine. I personally wouldn't, to be honest, it doesn't help because you're speaking to someone who doesn't really have a lot of caffeine. But I think personally, if you're having any caffeine past sort of that 5-6 o'clock mark, depending on what you're doing obviously, but that 5-6 p.m, it's always going to alter your sleep. It's always going to affect your sleep and make it that little bit harder to doze off and actually have a consistent sleep as well, which is a massive part. If you're having those dotted sleeps, it's a lot harder to actually fit well. You're never going to feel like you've actually fulfilled that 8-hour mark, because you might have had 8 hours, but it was dotted. It was 3, then it was 2, then it was 1, then do you know what I mean? So I think that's massive. So diet and nutrition is always going to help in that aspect. And then yes, if it comes down to it later on in the line, you've stuck to the diet, you've had the good nutrition, and now you're thinking it's still not helping, I need to come something else. That's when supplements can take place. And what you might find as well actually is you may have a nutrient sort of deficiency, and there might be a certain nutrient that you're not getting in naturally, that you might need to up the dose on, I guess. And you can get tests like that. There's plenty online where you can get these small little packs that tell you. I think you send them off. I've never actually had one myself, but I think you send them off to obviously the company themselves, and then they come back and tell you, they give you a sheet of results and whatnot. So that might be a route that you need to go down. But yeah, guys, I think stick to your staples. Really try clean up that diet, and then see how you feel after that. But yeah, when it comes to time management, I think it's massive for anyone who's interested in the gym in any way, shape or form, whatever their goals are, whether they're trying to lean down, whether they're trying to put on a bit of size, whether they're just trying to develop that cardio element. I think it's always going to be massive, because at the end of the day, consistency is key. And yeah, I know it's a very thrown around generic comment, but it's so true. Like, it couldn't be more true. I think you just got to hold yourself to that word and just stick with it. When it comes to diet, when it comes to sleep, when it comes to drinking the water, when it comes to actually fulfilling the time in the day, so making sure you have enough time to fulfill the tasks that you need to do. It's just massive for every aspect of where you're trying to get to. So I think making sure that not only you're sleeping enough, but then waking up with enough time to complete the tasks that you need to do within the day, it's only going to set you up for great things. And realistically, you're always going to be put under that stress, put under that pressure if you're not complying to your 10-hour critical window, 12-hour critical window of when you're waking up and when you're going to sleep. Obviously, and that's the other thing as well. Don't mess up the other parts of your life, your sleep pattern, for example, just because of the fact that you didn't wake up on the time where you needed to get the task done. Do you know what I mean? So don't let that affect your progress forward. So yeah, for me, I'm trying to think now. I reckon it's probably a 12 to 14 hour window where I'm probably awake. Probably more towards the 14-hour mark. And I think leaning on to meals actually, which we'll talk about later, but I think to make sure that I can fit in the meals that I need to do, and obviously this video being based on putting on size and actually putting on muscle mass, I think having to eat 5-6 meals a day, if you don't give yourself at least 2.5 hours per meal, you're just going to struggle, and it's going to be really hard, and it's going to be really unenjoyable. And I think that's the most important part. It's just making it enjoyable for you, or making it as enjoyable as it can be. Do you know what I mean? It's never always going to be sunshine and rainbows, but you just got to look at it and think, right, I need to do X, Y, Z today. How can I plan it out accordingly to be the best possible? And whether that be in a 12-hour window, whether that be in a 16-hour window, if you can fulfill yourself with enough sleep and then give yourself the time in the day to complete the task necessary, you're set up for great things. So I think time management is massive, and yeah, really focus on that part, because it just makes everything else 10 times harder. If you don't fill in that time, it just makes it, yeah, as I say, it just makes it harder. So yeah, there you go, guys. They kind of link in together, and that's tip number one. So sleep and time is massive. All right, guys. Now, so I'm going to do a whole topic on this. This is going to be breakfast, a very controversial subject that I think for quite a lot of people, whether breakfast is a good thing, whether it's a bad thing, and I'm just going to talk about my sort of personal experience on it. So for me, breakfast has always been a thing throughout school, leading on to later life. It's always been a part of, and it's always been the biggest meal, which is a massive topic that we're gonna come on to in a sec. It's always been the biggest meal of my day, and the reason why links into number one, being with sleep and time. You got to put it into the most simple way possible. And for me, how long are you sleeping for? You're sleeping for 8, 9, 10, 6, 7, it doesn't matter how many hours you're sleeping for. That is going to be, no doubt in my mind, that is going to be the longest time that I'm going to spend without eating anything. So why wouldn't I fill it up with the biggest meal in the day? It's really as simple as that. I just personally think it just makes sense. It makes sense. If you're giving yourself, do you know what I mean, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours of not eating anything, and then you feed yourself a really small meal, and obviously this is talking in the subject of putting on size. Just remember that. So we're not obviously applying it to leaning down or sort of losing weight in any shape or form. This is all about putting on size here. So breakfast has to be, for me, the biggest meal. And more than anything, just set me up for the day. I don't want to be feeling tired the second I get up out of bed. I want to be feeling pretty alert and pretty awake. So as I say, just making sure that you're getting that meal in. A big staple for me personally is sort of 1,000 calories or more. But you've got to put it into context. Yes, I'm 6'3" and I weigh quite a lot. So it obviously comes with a sort of a pinch of salt in a way. But breakfast is massive, and I think it has to be a staple in terms of maintaining size. And I'm not talking about, I'm not going to be that guy who tells you now, right, you need to get out of bed straight away, eat 1,000 calorie meal, and then get started with your day. If you can't do that, and you feel like your stomach really isn't going to take that food on, give yourself 30 minutes, give yourself 40 minutes, give yourself that time, and then actually leading on to the next topic which we're going to talk about. It's going to link quite nicely, so we'll get straight on to the next one. Alright guys, so the next one, which as you heard before, I said I was going to be linking on to, number 3 is going to be exercise. Making sure that you're getting some form of exercise in before breakfast if you struggle to eat breakfast. I've always thought whenever I'm struggling to get a meal down, or I'm struggling to just get in the mood really, start eating, because obviously it is very instant. You're waking up and you're a bit all over the place, and then like, right, I've got to eat this massive meal and I don't know whether I'm going to get it down or not. I think any form of exercise, and I've actually put it on my Instagram stories before, and just anything, press ups, a little 10-minute circuit, a little walk outside before, if you need to, just to get a bit of fresh air, and then start with the meal. It'll just clear up that stomach and make you make it a hell of a lot of an easier process. And I think that's as I say, they all link back to the same thing. Make it easy for yourself. Make it as easy as possible, because it is hard. It is hard to eat surplus calories, because your body is meant to take on whatever your sort of net calorie is. Do you know what I mean? And pushing on more and more and more. Obviously, you're going to feel the repercussions, but it's making it as easy as possible. And I think adding in that little bit of exercise, especially in the morning as well, because obviously, as I say, being if it is going to be the biggest meal of your day, add in a little bit of exercise beforehand. Anything, absolutely anything, and then hopefully it'll feel a lot easier when you're trying to get it down. So yeah, that's probably the biggest part, and then making sure that you're sort of keeping that exercise throughout the day. So whether you do cardio, whether you do weights, making sure that you fulfill those sort of blips where you're feeling quite full. And obviously I get it, no one wants to train on a full stomach, but you will find probably 80-90% of the time you are going to be full during those windows where you need to train, or you need to do a run, or you need to do this, or you need to do that. You will be full because you're in that surplus. So yeah, for me, just keeping that exercise consistent, and actually using the exercise to facilitate the times where you're feeling too full to get in that next meal, to then make it easier when the meal comes around. So that's tip number 3 now, I believe. 3 or 4, but there we go. So moving on to the next one now, guys. Alright guys, tip number 4 now, leading on to water. So, what do I have to say about water? I think it is the most underrated sort of supplement, I guess you could say, out there. So water, obviously, is going to affect your digestive aid, and when we're putting on size, putting on muscle mass, actually being able to push the food down and into the right places is only going to be helped through water. As well as that, when you're training and when you're actually trying to perform, water is actually a massive part of sort of the synovial fluid mix, and it will help lubricate those joints, which obviously in turn is going to help you push cleaner and better and safer, which is always a massive part, especially nowadays. And as well as that, guys, the muscles actually taking on a lot of water as well. So obviously fulfilling those workouts and making sure that they're hydrated at all times, and you're hydrated at all times, because at the end of the day, your brain isn't going to function in the same way if you're not taking on the necessary water needed. In my personal intake, I probably have, if this is 1.5 litres, I might have 3 of these a day. And I think that's That's probably an exceeded amount. You probably don't need that much. But for me, I've just got used to it over time, and I probably started on half of these or one of these. You know what I mean? And then it builds up over time, and I think I feel quite happy now taking on that sort of water intake, and I just feel better throughout the day, to be honest. I think it's nice. It's always nice having that fizzy drink or having that little pick me up, but that's another reason why I don't try to take on as much caffeine as possible, because the whole like crash and burn and all that sort of stuff, and it's not ideal, especially when you're trying to fulfill the whole day and trying to keep as productive as possible. And yes, you might not have that efficient spike of 1-2 hours, but at the same time, I'd rather be more fulfilled throughout the day, and I think this is why this bad boy is with me all the time. So yeah, that's tip number 4 now, I believe, and yeah, we're moving on to the next one. Tip number 5 now, and this is going to be all based around training. Do I think training is the most important part of maintaining that size and actually putting it on? No, I don't personally, and I've actually been in a scenario now where I haven't trained in about 2 weeks without weights, that is, just because of certain circumstances and whatnot. And I've still managed to maintain most of my weight and most of my size as well, and that's in a 2-week period. So it's a pretty long amount of time for someone who would train 6 times a week without fail, really. So I think that's clearly why it's not going to be the biggest part of this, but it's a vital part. And obviously I wouldn't have got the structure that I would have got if I didn't train the way I did. And I think for me, when you're in those sort of bulk seasons, so to say, putting on size, trying to up the calories, you just got to try and train that little bit harder. You've got to push as much as you can during those sort of windows, because otherwise you're just going to struggle so much more when you don't have the calories. So really make the most out of the calories that you have. You've got them there, so you just use them, burn them off, get it done, and make them sessions a little bit longer. Add them 15 minutes onto your workout. Add that 10 minutes onto your workout. Add a couple sets into the sets that you're already doing before. Do you know what I mean? So realistically, just really make the most out of that training. Really add in those elements and make it even harder than it was before, because you're not going to get that same chance to have those sort of calories within you. And yeah, it will only make it easier for all the steps beforehand. It'll make it easier to sleep because you'll be more tired. It'll make it easier for food because you'll be more hungry because you're actually burning it off as well. Yeah, so tip number 5 all comes down to just putting on that extra workload, making it that extra bit harder while you have the opportunity to do so, because you have them calories built up. Alright guys, now that's a wrap. So as you can probably imagine, it wasn't as entertaining probably as the last video was. But yeah, I was just trying to add in that sort of information element and really try and get to grips with you guys what I've learned over the years, and what you guys can obviously kickstart with and be one step ahead of me in some cases as well. So yeah, if you liked, make sure to like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will see you lot in the next video. Peace.